Okay, good morning, everyone. I just thought I'd start by welcoming you. Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap to all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Today is our first day of using all of our new technology to try to live stream out over the internet and involve other people throughout the world in our classes. So thank you all for being here. We'll see how everything works. It seems like it's working really well. We've tested it. And as we go forward in class, if you guys have any questions, if you wouldn't mind using the microphones in the bowl there, that will help the people online to be able to hear the questions that you guys are asking, and they'll be able to participate and you guys will be able to participate. So we're kind of connecting a live audience all around the world. So thank you all for being here, and pleased that you're interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're going to be in our third part of a three-part series where I'm going into the Eightfold Path. I'm helping students to take a really deep dive into understanding the Eightfold Path. Today we're going to be studying the mental discipline section, which is right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is where you're going to see how to train your mind, not only in meditation, but in daily life as well. You're going to be learning through the words of the Buddha. We start each one of our classes with a meditation in order to help you train your mind and develop your meditation practice. So if you'd like to join along in meditation, I start out with a chant, which we have the chants over there on the table that you're welcome to get the laminated sheets if you like, and it has the English translations. Those of you guys that are online, if you would like to join along in the chants, you're welcome to. We're handing those out here. And as we start with the chants to kind of ease us into meditation, then I'll provide some guidance to be able to help you guys during the meditation. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet and we'll all be meditating together. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting as well. And if you guys have any questions on meditation, you're always welcome to ask those at any time during the classes, and you can even post them in the Facebook group. You can ask questions by sending a private message, and you can even schedule personal guidance sessions, either here in Chiang Mai or online. There's a tool that you can schedule and we can meet in Zoom. So if you'd like to join along in the meditation, if you would like to make your lower body comfortable, your hands and arms comfortable, the upper body erect, this will ensure that you can then train the mind. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Tang Mahakawanhang Apiwateyami Sawakato Mahakawata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma ติสัตตาตาวะมนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms relaxed and comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance, just to remind you to breathe in through the nose, experiencing the full inhale. And whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Just wherever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now, and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะกวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมหะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. All right. So I'd like to just welcome all of you again, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to all of you guys. Today we're going to be studying the Eightfold Path, specifically the section of mental discipline, where you're learning about how to train the mind, not only during meditation, but outside of meditation as well, because your life practice that you're developing as part of this Eightfold Path, it's all encompassing. You'll need to train the mind, not only in meditation, but in daily life as well. So far, as we studied the Eightfold Path, I shared with you right view and right intention in our first class of this three-part series. With right view, you learned about the three universal truths and the four noble truths, where you started to understand that craving, desire, attachment, the mental longing and strong eagerness is what's causing the discontent feelings. The discontent feelings are what you're trying to eliminate as part of the path to enlightenment, where you get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. So in order to eliminate them, you need to know what's causing them. So in right view, in the Four Noble Truths, you're learning about craving, desire, attachment, this longing and yearning, this chasing after the objects of your affection, which is causing the discontent feelings. And then you eliminate those through the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the complete, perfect plan that the Buddha shares in order to help you to train your mind to eliminate the discontent feelings and get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, where the mind's no longer experiencing even the slightest discontent feelings. Then we started talking about right intention as part of that first class. This is where you're learning about the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness, what the intention of renunciation is, where you're training the mind to let go, and you're willing to let go of false beliefs, false opinions, certain views that the mind is hindered by. Because if you're currently experiencing things like frustration, anger, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these discontent feelings, there are certain aspects of your mind that there's certain false beliefs, certain false opinions, certain misperceptions and misunderstandings that the mind has that you need to be willing to let go of. One of the very first ones that you need to be willing to let go of is that other people are causing you to be angry. This is oftentimes what the unenlightened mind thinks, but when you study the teachings of the Buddha in the Four Noble Truths and you learn, you reflect to independently verify those teachings, and then you practice, you can see the truth for yourself that your own mind is causing these discontent feelings. So there's various things along the journey to enlightenment that the mind is currently misunderstanding and has misperceptions about that you need to be willing to let go of. And what you're doing is you're letting go of those things and replacing it with wisdom. So as you're learning the teachings of the Buddha, you're reflecting on those to independently verify them, and then you're practicing them. And this is what transforms the mind away from the discontent feelings. So practicing that intention of renunciation or right thought or right thinking where you're willing to let go. And then the non-ill will. This is goodwill. Essentially, it's a double negative, non-ill will. It's a double negative, so it's essentially practicing the intention of goodwill, which is loving kindness. Then you're practicing the intention of harmlessness, where you're either incapable or disinterested in causing harm to other beings. Because as long as you're causing harm to other beings, this harm is going to come back to you based on the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. So when you cause harm in the world to other beings, this harm is going to come back to you. So this is the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path, understanding right view and right intention. And we went into that in a lot of detail. And if you haven't studied that yet, this has all been recorded, so you can get on our YouTube channel, on Facebook, on our podcast. You can take other courses and retreats and programs that I share where I go into that in a lot of detail. Then we talked about the moral conduct section of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. This is where you're surely starting to understand the natural law of karma, and you understand that your moral conduct is affecting how you experience things in the world, that if you cause harm through your speech or actions or livelihood, this is all going to come back to you. So the Buddha shares a certain level of detail in the Eightfold Path with right speech, where you're learning about eliminating lying, the slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. And then he goes into more detail in that with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, understanding to speak at the right time, what you say is true, speaking gentle, speaking beneficially, and with a mind of loving kindness. And again, I go into detail with all of those so you can see different examples of how you can look at your own direct experience in life and look back and see where you didn't practice these things that you experience some kind of unwholesome result. And because of our lack of wisdom of the natural law of karma, we will tend to make unwise decisions that produces unwholesome results. And one of the things that we do in the unenlightened state is we make unwise decisions about our speech. And then when we put out harmful speech, that harm comes back to us through our relationships. Then we learned about right action, which the Buddha teaches 3 kind of main actions that are very significant that can cause harm, which are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. But it's important to understand that this isn't black and white, right? When you study the teachings of the Buddha, he teaches also the 5 precepts, which plugs into the Eightfold Path and gives you more understanding around things like killing and stealing and sexual misconduct, because you need more detail than just those very simple rudimentary translations. So when we get to chapter 7 of the group learning program, we're going to be studying the 5 precepts using the words of the Buddha, where you can then see exactly what he taught around moral conduct for the 5 precepts, which plugs into the Eightfold Path. Right action, while he gives you these 3 significant actions of killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, it's also related to all bodily actions. That he doesn't say, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face, because if he gave you a complete list of every single harmful thing that you could do with the body, it would be exhaustive. So he gives you the 3 major ones, and then as an intelligent individual, you can surmise and you can see that yes, any harm that you cause with your bodily actions, that harm is going to come back to you. Even, dragging a suitcase through the aisle of a plane and running over people's feet and hitting their knees, you'll probably get some harsh looks. You might get some aggression or hostility. Someone might get really upset with this. And you dragging your suitcase through the aisle of a plane, that's a bodily action where you could potentially cause harm if you're not observant of how you're interacting in the world. So this speech and actions will help to clean up the way that you interact in the world with others, and you'll find less and less harm coming back to you. Then we talked about right livelihood. Right livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life through a livelihood. And the Buddha teaches about how however you sustain your life, you should ensure you're not causing harm to others through your livelihood. And he gives 5 trades that could cause harm. Trades that are selling weapons, that are selling living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. Again, all of this stuff isn't rules or commandments. He's not doing any of that. Instead, what he's doing is he's exposing you to the natural law of karma, and you can take any one of those livelihoods and you can see how if you performed any of those and sustained your life on those, that then you would be causing harm to other beings, and then this harm could come back to you and you would have difficulty sustaining your life. So he's giving you kind of this life practice that you can now practice in a way to ensure that you're making wise decisions and only experience wholesome results. Then he talks about scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. These are all things that we talked about last week and went into detail. In this first book that I share, the book series, all of this stuff is described in detail in all the classes and so forth. Here I was just kind of giving you a little bit of a refresher of what we've discussed so far, so that now we can go into talking about the mental discipline section of right effort, right mindfulness, or right concentration, because this is where you can see the whole totality of what the Buddha is teaching on these particular topics. Do you guys have any questions so far on anything that I've shared, just kind of as this little refresher as part of our getting into the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path? I'm going to just check here online if we have any questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions here. So let's go ahead and go into the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path. So we're going to be discussing right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. I'm going to be sharing the words of the Buddha, and then I'm going to help you to understand even further, because the Buddha speaks very clear, very concise, and very precise, but it helps to have somebody to guide you along and be able to understand a bit about what he was teaching. So it's very important when you're studying the teachings of the Buddha and you're progressing on this path to enlightenment to study with the original words of the Buddha. If you weren't studying with the words of the Buddha, you wouldn't know what he did teach and what he didn't teach. And it might surprise you that the vast majority of the world isn't actually studying with the words of the Buddha. So that's why this book series, it's titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. Because for a very long time, the teachings of the Buddha have been contained in 45 large volumes of books, and it's very expensive and very costly to be able to have this. The average person doesn't have access to the original teachings of the Buddha. Even the average temple doesn't have access to the original teachings of the Buddha. So this book series consolidates his teachings into manageable volumes and then makes it available for free, where you can download it for free, you can take it and go print it if you like, or you can get printed versions here at the temple or online if you'd like. So let's discuss this right effort using the words of the Buddha. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to break it down for you and show you exactly what the Buddha taught on this important topic. So here with right effort, what the Buddha shares is, in what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort. So he's talking about 4 different things here. There's 4 aspects of what he's talking about. So let me show you kind of in a form that's broken down, and then I'll provide you some examples so you can see how to apply this in your daily life. So the first thing that he's talking about in terms of right effort is he's talking about preventing unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind. So what he's saying, if there's anything that's unwholesome, that's not currently in your mind, prevent that from ever coming into your mind. And a good example that I've come up with that probably applies to the vast majority of people is that you probably don't have the idea of killing another human being in your mind. This is an unwholesome thing that would cause all kinds of harm, and you probably don't have that in your mind whatsoever. So what the Buddha is saying is apply the effort to prevent that from ever coming into your mind. And this is just one example. There's probably other things that are currently unwholesome that are not in your mind presently. And the Buddha is saying, apply the effort to prevent that from ever coming into the mind, whatever those unwholesome things are that aren't currently in the mind. And that's going to be unique to each individual. Each individual person is going to have various unwholesome things that aren't currently in their mind, and you need to prevent those from coming in. The second aspect of right effort is to abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. So if there's anything unwholesome that is currently in the mind, apply the effort to eliminate that, abandon that, cut it out of the mind. And the Buddha provides you various tools of how to do that, which you're going to learn as part of you growing and learning on the path, certain meditations and certain other tools and techniques that you're learning to eliminate the unwholesome qualities that are currently in the mind. So some examples might be if you're in a current relationship perhaps, and you have a craving to go have sexual contact with somebody outside of your relationship. This would be an unwholesome mental quality that's currently in the mind, and you would like to eliminate that from the mind. You would like to abandon it because you know it's going to cause harm to your current relationship, your current partner, and it's going to cause harm to other people, and therefore it's going to cause harm to you. This is why we get sexually transmitted diseases, and people have been injured and beat up and murdered for going outside of relationships. Not that I'm saying that those people deserve those kinds of things, but this is the natural law of karma. This is what occurs when we make unwise decisions. Then we experience unwholesome results. So a wise decision would be, if you're in a current existing relationship, to not go outside of that. So if you have this arising of the unwholesome quality of being interested to go outside your relationship, the Buddha is teaching you to apply the effort to eliminate that from the mind. That's the second part of right effort, applying the effort to eliminate certain unwholesome qualities that are in the mind. And then another one might be anger, frustration, irritation. As you notice these discontent feelings arising, you would like to apply the effort to cut this off and let this go. And again, what's unwholesome currently in your mind is going to be unique to each individual. These are just examples that I'm providing to help you see how to apply right effort. That whenever you see an unwholesome quality arising, you need to apply the effort to cut that off and let it go. The third part of right effort is to produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. So this is any wholesome mental states that you're learning about as part of this path, which you're going to learn many. If those mental states aren't currently in your mind, then apply the effort to bring those into the mind. And some examples might be something like generosity. One of the things you'll learn on this path is that generosity is an important part of your practice, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't be selfish. You won't be stingy and holding on to things really tightly. This is part of the whole problem with the unenlightened mind and why it experiences discontentedness. The whole reason why it experiences things like anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, and other discontent feelings is because the mind's holding on, wanting things to be a certain way. So in addition to breathing mindfulness meditation, which we just did, where you're training your mind to let go, you're also using generosity to train the mind to let go. What generosity is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation, with your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources, without any expectation of anything in return. So by you regularly practicing generosity with the people around you and different places that you go, you need to be able to practice that from the middle way. But by you practicing generosity and giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return, this is going to help you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, where your mind's not holding on tightly. So if this is something that you know that maybe you are kind of selfish, maybe you are kind of stingy, maybe you find it hard to share, right? You're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong necessarily. It's just that you lack wisdom, that this is an important quality of mind to be able to practice generosity, where you're giving and sharing. You're not just kind of doing things only for yourself based in your own selfish desires. So where you know that your mind is potentially selfish or stingy, then you find ways to share, and you give and you share. And this is a quality that you might need to apply effort to bring into the mind, right? And then there's something like compassion. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. This eliminates like indifference. If somebody was indifferent about the suffering and the despair, the challenges that other people experience, by moving your mind closer to the middle where you have concern for the misfortune of others, this would be compassion. But then if you go to extremes of that, you could start worrying about how people function in the world. You could get worried about how everybody's maybe certain people are experiencing harms in the world. So you need to practice even something like compassion in the middle way. If you had no compassion, you would be indifferent and you could care less about what other people experience. But if you're on the other side of this, you would be worried and maybe have anxiety or even fear about certain things that in the way that people experience them in the world. So by bringing the mind to the middle with right effort, you can cultivate this wholesome quality of compassion where you have concern for the misfortune of others. And these might be qualities that you need to bring into the mind. Or there's others potentially, right? As you progress on this path, you'll be able to observe certain wholesome qualities that are needed in order to train the mind to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And as you learn those wholesome mental qualities and you know that your mind doesn't currently have those, you're going to need to apply the right effort to bring those into the mind. And then the fourth aspect of this is that maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind. This is any wholesome qualities that are currently in the mind, the Buddha is sharing with you to support those, encourage those, don't allow them to fade. And some examples here might be loving kindness. Loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And if you notice that your mind currently has that wholesome quality, then you would like to support it, encourage it. Don't allow it to fade. Bring it to the full perfection and development. And then there's a quality of mind that you're going to learn about called sympathetic joy. These are from the Brahma Viharas. You're going to learn about these when we get to chapter 14. What sympathetic joy is, this is the joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. It's the exact opposite of jealousy or envy, right? So if you're noticing your mind's jealous or envious of other people and the things that they experience, the things that they have, the things that they're doing, then you're going to need to practice sympathetic joy. And if this is a quality that's currently in your mind, where you do see other people being successful and you're like, oh, great, well, good for you, right? Even though you maybe are not experiencing those things, you feel joy for their success, even if you didn't contribute to it. If that quality is currently in your mind, you would like to support it, encourage it, don't allow it to fade. And again, these wholesome qualities are going to be unique to each individual. There's certain wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind that you're going to need to apply the effort to bring into the mind. And there's certain wholesome qualities that are in your mind that are unique to you and that you're going to need to support those and encourage those and not allow them to fade. And you're going to learn as part of the path to enlightenment what the unwholesome qualities are and what the wholesome qualities are. And then, of course, you're not believing any of the teachings. You're learning what the Buddha is teaching you. You are reflecting on those to independently verify. And then you're practicing to see the truth for yourself, that as you independently verify things like generosity, compassion, loving kindness, and sympathetic joy, and you see like, yeah, it would be really wise if I practice that. When I have practiced that in the past, things went really well for me and I had really great relationships. So you can reflect on this through your own direct experience and through looking around the world, and you can independently verify the teachings of the Buddha that these things work. And then when you practice them in your daily life by applying right effort, now you can see that your personal and professional relationships are blossoming because you're no longer being stingy or having this lack of compassion, or where there's a lack of loving kindness or sympathetic joy. You can see that through applying the effort to bring those qualities into the mind, that things improve in the way that your internal dialogue, you're experiencing that, and in your relationships with other people. So let me see if you guys have any questions on this particular step of right effort before we move on to the next one, because this step and the next one are really connected. All the steps on the Eightfold Path, they work together in totality, but here, this particular step of right effort and right mindfulness go together. You wouldn't be able to practice right effort without understanding the next step. Are there any questions? If you guys have questions here, there's microphones here that you can just turn on and ask so that our live stream will be able to hear. You guys shy? Don't want to ask any questions for the live stream? Let's see if anybody on the live stream has questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions here or in our class. So let's move on to the next step, which is right mindfulness. Again, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to read the words of the Buddha, and then I'm going to break it down for you to help you understand further what he's actually explaining. So here he says, "In what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware, and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware, and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware, and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware, and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness." So again, what he's describing here is four things. These are called the four foundations of mindfulness. Notice he's talking about body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, mental objects as mental objects. These are called the four foundations of mindfulness. So I'm going to help you understand what these are and then how to actually practice them. When you're first getting started on the path to enlightenment, you might think about this step of right mindfulness as just awareness of mind. That's the best way to start thinking about it and start approaching it before you might decide to develop what's called the four foundations of mindfulness. What awareness of mind is where you're aware of what's going on in the mind. On this path to enlightenment, when we're off the path, we tend to just kind of plow through the world, not really observant of what's going on in our mind. I describe it as, knocking down the trees and burning up the forest. We're just kind of like making all kinds of haphazard decisions, being completely unaware of what's going on in our own mind. So what the Buddha is teaching you here under right mindfulness is to have awareness of the mind. You're going to need to start being aware of the mind, because how could you ever apply right effort to eliminate certain unwholesome qualities and cultivate certain wholesome qualities if you didn't understand what was in your mind? So you'll need to have that awareness of mind, and you're developing that through your meditation. When you're practicing breathing mindfulness meditation and you're focused on the breath, you're starting to get aware of the mind because you're focused on the breath, and when you notice that the mind is moving off the breath, you notice that. That's the mindfulness. That's the awareness of mind. And then you cut off that thought and you bring the mind back to the breath. This is the awareness of mind. So this is where a lot of people start out, is just developing your meditation practice, which, by the way, is the next step, right concentration. But you're developing your meditation practice to develop that awareness of mind or mindfulness and applying right effort. This might be something that you're starting to work on, perhaps. But as you get going on this path, you would like to move deeper into mindfulness and start developing what's called the four foundations of mindfulness. This is having awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. What this is prior to your mind becoming discontent, before you get angry, frustrated, irritated, annoyed, or any other discontent feeling, even those conditioned pleasant feelings of happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria, or even those neither painful nor pleasant feelings like shyness, right, or some kind of displeasure, there's going to be some bodily sensation that's experienced. I'll use anger as an example because this is one that people tend to be aware of. If you've ever noticed, you may not have, but if you've ever noticed, before your mind experiences the feeling of anger in the mind, there's going to be some bodily sensations associated with it. There's going to be maybe tightening of the chest, maybe a little bit of pain around the heart perhaps. You might feel some rising sensation in the body. You might feel some heat in the face. You might feel some pressure in the skull. Have you guys noticed this before? Right? This is usually what's associated with something like anger. This is the bodily sensation. Because there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, where the mind has this mental longing, strong eagerness, wanting something to be its way, if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, because the mind's not getting what it wants. Due to those cravings, desires, attachments, those longing and yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection, if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. If you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. The mind is causing these feelings itself. Well, prior to these feelings arising, there's going to be bodily sensations that are cluing you in that, hey, your mind's about to experience a feeling. You're either going to get a conditioned pleasant feeling, painful feeling, or feeling that's neither painful nor pleasant. These are the conditioned feelings that the mind is experiencing. They arise, they change, and they fade away. And even these conditioned happiness or excitement or elation, it's ultimately unsatisfying because it's temporary. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. What you're doing as part of this path to enlightenment is you're working to get to this unconditioned happiness or this unconditioned mental state of joy where the mind's just always joyful. In the unenlightened state, this condition has to be met, and this condition has to be met, and this condition has to be met, and then you'll be happy. And then when those conditions aren't met, your mind will move to these painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, and others. So you're trying to get rid of these conditioned feelings so that now the mind can experience the unconditioned joy, the unconditioned peacefulness, where all day long your mind is peaceful and joyful. There doesn't need to be any conditions met in order for the mind to be peaceful and joyful. It's just always joyful. So in the unenlightened state, you'll wake up and you might see it's sunny outside and you'll get really excited because maybe you're going to go on a hike today. And then when you go take a shower and you come back, then you see it's raining and you might get sad or frustrated. This is because of the conditionality of the feeling, that you created an inner feeling based on some condition like the sun. But because the sun is impermanent, your feeling is also impermanent. That happiness will arise, it'll change, and it'll fade away. And then the mind will end up in the sadness or frustration or other feelings. So there's these bodily sensations that are occurring prior to the pleasant feelings, the painful feelings, and the feelings of neither painful nor pleasant coming into the mind. It's kind of like an early warning system, helping you to understand, like, hey, you're about to get a feeling here. And you can take action here. You can take right effort. If you train your mind well enough, you can apply right effort to cut off and let go of those bodily sensations that are occurring. You can save your mind from having that feeling of anger enter in as a feeling, because that's the next thing that's going to occur. If you allow the bodily sensation to continue, it's going to continue to arise, and then it's going to become a feeling in the mind. And now your mind is angry or frustrated or irritated. Now you got a real problem to deal with, because now your speech and your actions and other things are going to be affected by that anger in the mind. And whatever comes out of your mouth or whatever bodily actions you do, it's going to be harmful in the world. So now there's this feeling in the mind of anger, frustration, or some other discontent feeling. Then if you allow that to persist, then it's going to affect the condition of the mind for a few hours or a few days. Have you ever been angry for like a week or two? Right? Yeah, of course, right? We all have, right? This is because we didn't understand this process that the Buddha is explaining to you. That there's these bodily sensations, there's these feelings that come into the mind. Now it affects the condition of the mind for a few hours, a few days, or a week or so that you're agitated. And then it feeds what's called a mental object. What a mental object is a deeply rooted container in the mind that's being fed by all of these experiences that you're having. So in this particular example of anger, the mental object is called ill will. It's a deeply rooted container in the mind that keeps getting filled up. We weren't born with ill will when we were born. When we went into the nursery at the hospital or wherever we were born, we didn't hate other babies, right? We didn't hate the nurse and we didn't hate the doctor. We didn't have anger towards them when we were a little baby. But based on various experiences over the course of our life, our mind was conditioned and it formed this mental object of ill will. So we had various things that were occurring, certain cravings in our mind. We had bodily sensations, we had feelings that affected the condition of our mind, and we started forming this mental object of ill will more and more. We asked mom and dad for candy or ice cream or whatever we wanted. And if they gave it to us, we got excited. We got pleasant feelings. Yay, we got ice cream. But there are some cases where mom and dad didn't buy us ice cream or candy. And we got angry, we got frustrated, and we might have blamed mom and dad because we had wrong view. We thought mom and dad were the ones who were making us angry. We got this bodily sensations that occurred. We had these feelings that affected the condition of our mind for several minutes or hours or days, and we kept forming these mental objects. And this is what's been going on all throughout the life. And now the mind is conditioned in the unenlightened state, experiencing these things. And the mind is wired to do this in the unenlightened state. And what you're doing with these teachings in developing this awareness of mind, of the four foundations of mindfulness, is you're becoming so aware of this process, and you can see that this process is true and it really is happening, that you can now apply right effort to rewire the mind, where the mind will no longer do this. Where right now you have certain cravings in your mind, and if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings, and if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. But you can rewire this. You can train the mind to no longer do this. And understanding this process of what the mind's experiencing and applying right effort is what's going to help you do that. So when you observe the bodily sensations arising, you can cut that off and let it go, avoiding the mind from having to ever experience anger. You're not suppressing the feeling. Sometimes when I describe this, people think you're suppressing the feeling. You're not, because it hasn't even become a feeling yet. It's still a bodily sensation. You're cutting it off before it ever becomes a feeling. But if it becomes a feeling, which it will, because you're not going to be able to go out and just practice this immediately and be an expert at it just because you learned it here at the temple. There's going to be situations where your mind's going to get angry. You're going to get frustrated because your mind's not fully trained yet. You can cut it off and let it go as a feeling as well. Eliminate it from the mind. You can redirect the mind into another direction. The breathing mindfulness meditation is there to help you to be able to do this, because your mind naturally isn't going to be able to do this because it has craving, desire, attachment. So you're reverting the mind and retraining it and trying to get it to this point where you can let go of either the bodily sensation or the feeling. If you miss it as a feeling, you can at least cut it off as a condition of the mind. If you're noticing for a few hours, you're kind of agitated, well, you can try to cut it off internally. But when you first get started on the path, that's really challenging because you haven't necessarily been meditating that much. So that's why you might go for a walk, or you go for a bike ride, or you do something else, right? You redirect the mind and try to cut off and let this go. And then what you're doing is that mental object is you're trying to uproot that. And the Buddha is giving you various tools. In this case with ill will, he's providing you loving kindness meditation. Loving kindness meditation is a consistent ongoing training where it's like a jackhammer, that you're jackhammering this mental object and trying to break it up and get it out of the mind so that it's no longer there. But while you're doing the loving kindness meditation, you also need to go out in daily life and practice through your intentions, your speech, and your actions to be loving and kind. That's why the Buddha teaches, as part of the Eightfold Path, the moral conduct section. The moral conduct is there to help you to understand how to be loving and kind in the world. So as you're using loving kindness meditation to break up this ill will and wear it away slowly but surely, You also need to practice through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, loving kindness. And the Buddha is providing you guidance of how to be able to do that. But all the while you're doing this, trying to break up the mental object, you need to start becoming aware more and more as you develop your practice of these bodily sensations and cut it off and let it go there, so you're no longer feeding this mental object. You're kind of putting a blockade at the bodily sensations so that it's no longer allowing the mind to experience a conditioned feeling, which then affects the condition of the mind and then feeds this mental object. One of the ways you can think about it is that if you were on a boat and you were going from, say, the UK to America, and you're out in the middle of the ocean in this boat, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water comes into the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. And now you've got to get this water out. So if you can cut off and let go of the arising discontentedness as a bodily sensation, you're preventing the water from ever coming into the boat. And now you don't have to deal with that problem because you've prevented it from ever occurring. So you can apply right effort to prevent this from coming into the mind. But you're going to need to practice your meditation of breathing mindfulness meditation to start becoming aware of the mind, to have that mindfulness and concentration, and then train the mind to easily let go. Oftentimes when I'm teaching breathing mindfulness meditation and instructing people, they think that the goal is to eliminate the thoughts because you're cutting off thoughts and bringing the mind back to the breath, but that's not what you're actually doing. You're training the mind to more and more easily let them go, to notice when they occur with mindfulness and concentration, and then to be able to easily let them go. So the meditation is like an exercise. It's like going to the gym. You're exercising the mind to build this awareness of mind, ultimately the 4 foundations of mindfulness over time, and then you're building concentration, the ability to focus and concentrate on the breath. Then you're training the mind to easily let go. So if 20 times, 30 times, 50 times in your meditation, you're needing to train the mind to let go and come back to the breath, let go and come back to the breath, let go and come back to the breath. This is helping you so that in daily life, with mindfulness, awareness of mind, when you're noticing the bodily sensations starting to come up and your mind's about to get angry, and you know that the feeling's coming next, you can cut that off and let it go. Instead of staying there in the conversation and perhaps arguing and being argumentative and being bitter and harsh and hostile with a person, you can train your mind to cut that off and let it go, maybe redirecting the mind by just walking away, perhaps. That might be what you need to do in certain situations. And then more and more, as you restrain the mind and you pull it back in this way, you're essentially rewiring the mind so that it no longer experiences conditioned feelings. You can get to the point where you train your mind so well in meditation and in daily life through practicing mindfulness and right effort that you get to the point where anger no longer arises. Even frustration or irritation or annoyance, even the slightest little displeasure doesn't arise in the enlightened mind, that you can be peaceful and joyful all day long, right? So you can go about life without experiencing these strong feelings that are experienced when the mind has these pollutions that are in the mind. So this is right mindfulness, and I explained to you how it connects over to right effort. Do you guys have any questions on either right effort or right mindfulness? Okay, Samantha has a question. It's Samantha, right? Yes. Okay, perfect.
Is this on?
Yep, there we go.
I don't quite understand the mental objects. Are the mental objects a result of a craving?
So the mental objects, you might explain this as like conditioning of the mind or pollution of the mind. So these are formed in the mind over the course of your life. So let's use this one of ill will. So perhaps at different times in our lives, we wanted certain things. And we had certain cravings. We had cravings in our mind. We were longing, yearning for ice cream and chocolate. In some cases, we got it, and we got a conditioned, pleasant feeling because we didn't know growing up. We lacked wisdom of what was going on, and our parents lacked wisdom of this because we didn't grow up in a country where these teachings were necessarily taught. So we got these conditioned feelings, so excited with chocolate or ice cream. And now, in some cases, we got what we wanted, so we got those pleasant feelings, but in some cases, due to impermanence, we didn't get what we wanted. and we got those painful feelings. And now we associated our painful feelings that we are experiencing in our mind to this outside thing. And we typically will push that away, either the situation or the person. We will become bitter and harsh, or we'll put our expectations on a person to try to control them to do things our way. So this is like a temper tantrum, or trying to convince mom or dad to give us what we want, right? So we experience these things in others. Like we maybe wanted our tires changed at the tire changing shop, and they couldn't do it in the time frame that we wanted, so we got angry and we got frustrated. Or maybe some cases they could, and then we got excited and we got elated. So our mind in the unenlightened state is going up and down and up and down, getting all these conditioned feelings, and we're forming mental objects. So there's the 10 fetters, which we're going to be discussing next week, which are the 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered, which are all mental objects that the mind is holding on to. And these pollutions, or these taints, or these defilements, these are what's causing the mind to experience the unenlightened condition of discontentedness. Of course, it's craving, desire, attachment, which is the core problem, but there's these individual pollutions, things like conceit, ill will, sensual desire, all these and others. So these mental objects get formed over time, and we might refer to this as conditioning of the mind, that the mind's been conditioned in a certain way. And what you're doing is you're training the mind to get unconditioned, where you're eliminating these pollutants. You're eliminating the conditions that are causing the mind to experience discontentedness. So now, by the time you get to enlightenment, you have this unconditioned mind that is now pure, and it's now experiencing the peace and joy. So one of the ways to think about this is that the mind is already enlightened, and you've got these pollutions or these mental objects that are hindering you from being able to experience that. And the Buddha is giving you the tools of how to eliminate that conditioning, eliminate those mental objects that are deeply rooted in the mind, so that now the natural enlightened mind can shine through, and you can experience this brightness and this radiance of the enlightened mind shining through.
Okay, so it sounds like this will get fleshed out in the next session.
I'll explain what the mental objects
What
are,
the
because we're
objects
going to be
are.
going through the 10 fetters,
okay.
and you'll be able to learn what the individual fetters are. But now what I thought you were asking me is like the process of how mental objects get formed, and kind of what are they. Is that what your question was, or was your question different?
Just more examples, but it sounds like next week as well we'll
Okay.
learn more about that.
Yeah, so sensual desire is one. So like wanting ice cream or wanting chocolate, and longing and yearning for it, and thinking this external thing is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction, that's a mental object. Ill will, this bitterness, hostility, animosity, this is a mental object that gets formed. Conceit, which is like arrogance or pride or boastfulness, this is a mental object that gets formed. We don't come out of our mother's stomach with arrogance and pride. We don't come out, going into the nursery like, look at my blanket's better than your blanket, trying to put ourselves above people or below people. This is what the mind does as it takes on more and more conditioning. And our mind's been conditioned in this way based on previous births, which is something that we talk about in other classes, but this continuous cycle of rebirth where we've been born in the animal realm and other realms, our mind takes on a certain amount of conditioning. But when we're born into this realm, in the human realm, we don't have things like conceit, or we don't have ill will, for example. But we do have sensual desire. And we have some of these other pollutants that we're born into this world with. And now, when you learn about them, you can actually uproot them and get them out of the mind. And that's where you'll see the more peace and more joy coming into the mind. And you'll know more and more what those fetters are, what those mental objects are. And this is the process of how to eliminate them. And as you're eliminating them, you'll see the truth for yourself that they're working. This is where the teachings of the Buddha are very unique, that you're not believing his teachings and hoping that someday something good will happen when you die. You're actually learning now. You're reflecting on his teachings now to independently verify them and then practice them. And then you see the results, that your mind's becoming more peaceful. So this is explaining the process of how that's occurring, and how to take action in daily life. Because you're going to have your meditation practice that is there to exercise the mind and build certain qualities. But then these are things that you're doing in daily life to be observant of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind. And then you're going to learn what the mental objects are so that you can be aware of those when they're arising. Because we're typically not aware of these things as we're going through life. So if you're not currently aware of like things like the bodily sensations, that's something that you can be doing. You can start taking note of the mind, because you're still going to get angry. You're still going to get frustrated until your mind's more trained. So if you're not aware of those bodily sensations that I described, start becoming aware of them prior to your mind even getting a pleasant feeling. There's sometimes a little bit of tingling on the shoulders or the neck or the head. The more you meditate, you'll not notice that you'll start building awareness of these bodily sensations. But if you're not currently aware of those bodily sensations, start cluing into them more and more. And then you'll be able to start taking action to eliminate the discontentedness and those cravings that are causing it. Yes, you're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, so let's go on to the next step, which is right concentration. Right concentration is now going to help you understand another aspect of your practice, your regular daily practice. Here, this is the words of the Buddha about the benefits of practicing the Eightfold Path. He's not actually describing here how to practice right concentration. He describes how to practice right concentration in other parts of his teachings that plug into the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is a core central teaching, and then there's other teachings that plug into it. What he describes here in the Eightfold Path as part of right concentration is he's explaining the results of practicing all the 8 factors of the Eightfold Path of what you're going to actually experience. These are called the jhanas. The jhanas are mental qualities that you're experiencing as preliminary phases that your mind goes through before it experiences the first stage of enlightenment. So when you're first getting started on the path, you're learning the path, you're putting together things like right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. You're kind of getting your arms around that to include things like the 5 precepts and developing your meditation practice and so forth. As you're doing that for a period of time, you're starting to eliminate some of the pollution of your mind. Then you're going to start noticing these jhanas, these mental qualities that are experienced. There's the first, second, third, and fourth jhana. These are certain mental qualities or phases that the mind goes through. But you need a certain amount of meditation and a certain amount of mental absorption where the mind has absorbed a certain amount of meditation and a certain amount of the qualities and benefits of practicing all the other factors on the Eightfold Path. I'm going to explain to you how to practice right concentration, and then at other times in our program, I'm going to explain to you what these jhanas are and what you're going to be experiencing. But you're not going to experience these anytime soon, like in the next month or two, so it doesn't really make sense to explain these. If you've been practicing for a period of time, you may be already experiencing these, or your mind might be moving into these, but we'll talk about them at another time. Since this is the beginning of our group learning program, I'd rather focus you on how to actually practice right concentration. So here you can read this. It's in the book in volume 1, chapter 5. You can see this, that the Buddha is describing the jhanas. But let me focus you on how to actually practice this, which is what he explains in other parts of his teachings. In other parts of his teachings, he explains about developing a meditation practice. So developing your meditation practice is that exercise of the mind. The breathing mindfulness meditation and the loving kindness meditation. These are the 2 forms of meditation that everybody on the path to enlightenment is going to need. So that's why I focus on those in all of our foundational programs, so that you can build up your breathing mindfulness meditation and your loving kindness meditation. This is exercising the mind to eliminate certain unwholesome qualities and to cultivate certain wholesome qualities. With breathing mindfulness meditation, you're cultivating the wholesome qualities of mindfulness and concentration, and you're working to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, which is an unwholesome quality. With loving kindness meditation, you're applying effort in meditation to cultivate loving kindness, or this genuine interest in seeing others be well, this goodwill towards all beings, and you're eliminating anger, hatred, and ill will, and even those lesser versions like annoyance and agitation and things like this. These are two meditations that you need because they address two of the major problems, craving and anger. You're going to learn about what's called the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires when we get to chapter 8. This is where you'll see more of the problems that the Buddha is describing, because with the Four Noble Truths, he's explaining craving, desire, attachment, this mental longing, strong eagerness. You're kind of getting this window into the mind to understand what's the cause of discontentedness. But then he goes deeper into things that we refer to as the three poisons, the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires, which gives you now three high-level problems that the unenlightened mind is experiencing. And then he gives you the solution to those problems. Then in the 10 fetters, he goes even deeper. He has this layered effect. This is really helpful for a student because rather than going right down into the detail, he kind of layers his teaching so that you can get deeper and deeper as you go. He explains the problem and he explains the solution. So these two meditations of breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness are addressing two of the three primary problems in the mind. And you would need to gradually build up this practice to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. And you're not going to start out that way, typically. It can take 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to that type of practice, right? But you would like to do that gradually. You're on your own journey to enlightenment. You're not in a competition with anybody. You're not trying to beat anybody. So wherever you are in your meditation practice, that's where you're at. If you do 1 session for 5 minutes a day, okay, that's where you're starting. Or if you're doing 2 sessions for 10 or 15 minutes, okay, that's where you're starting. Start there. But then gradually expand that over the course of 6 months, a year, 2 years, where you're working up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. Because what you're going to notice is as you're meditating, you're going to start cleaning up various parts of your life. There might be certain things that you're currently doing that you'll start noticing that the meditation is more beneficial than those things, and you might start purging those out of your life. If you're spending 2, 3, 4 hours on social media or doing other things, you might decide to reduce that down to 1 hour or 30 minutes or an hour and a half or 2 hours or something like this, and you'll create more space in your life because you're starting to notice the benefits of the meditation. It's kind of like when you first started to brush your teeth and take a shower. Our parents had to kind of encourage us and remind us and kind of push us along to take a shower and brush our teeth. But over time, as we started doing it, we started noticing benefit more and more. And then as we started noticing that benefit, we then started having a tendency to do it more frequently. And we started doing it for longer periods of time too, where we would just stay in the shower and let all the nice warm water or the cool water, whatever you like, to hit the body. And you started enjoying the showers, where when we were younger, it was like, I don't really want to take a shower. I just want to play, right? Where now we take showers pretty much every day, unless we're sick or something like that, and we brush our teeth, right? Because we see the benefit in it, and nobody has to tell us to do it. Well, with meditation, it's the same way. You're going to need to arise the energy and the effort to meditate. Mom and dad's not going to tell you to meditate. I'm not going to call you up and remind you to meditate. You're going to need to decide to do it on your own. But as you do, you'll notice more and more benefit with it. And then you'll have a tendency to do it more regularly. And this is where you'll start seeing more and more benefit. And you'll start expanding it more and more. So wherever you start is where you start. What you'll notice is frequency is more beneficial than duration. So if it's a matter of 1 session for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, I would recommend that you do the 2 for 15 and then gradually expand that. Or even if it's 2 for 10 minutes, right? Or if you have 1 for 15 minutes and 1 for 5 minutes, just do your meditation and then just gradually work on expanding it. The frequency, morning and evening, is really helpful. And you would like to do this when your mind's attentive and alert and active. Sometimes if someone's going to meditate before bed, they might delay that too long, and then their mind's kind of sleepy. And then when they start meditating, there's not this attentiveness and this alertness in the mind. So you would like to meditate prior to getting sleepy. So if you usually go to sleep at, say, 10 p.m. at night, probably somewhere around 9:30, you would like to be meditating, because then your mind can be attentive and alert for your meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're actively training the mind, and you're not interested in the mind being sleepy while you're meditating. You'll notice you will get better quality sleep as you start meditating, but you would like your mind to be active during that meditation, so you might start at 9 or 9:30, or some people might even do it at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. You'll decide for yourself. As you're meditating, I don't suggest that you use an alarm. Oftentimes people will maybe use an alarm. And one of two things will happen when you're using an alarm. You'll either be deep in meditation, getting all kinds of benefit, and your mind will be like, why did I set that alarm? I could have gotten more if I wouldn't have set the alarm. Or you'll be in meditation thinking, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? You're craving, you're longing, you're yearning. So you would like to kind of undo all of that. So when you're able, I don't suggest that you set an alarm. You just look at the time, it's 9 p.m. or it's 6 p.m. or whatever time it is, 8 a.m. And then you do your meditation. And then when you're done, you look at the clock again. Oh, it's 8:15. Okay, I meditated for 15 minutes. And you'd like to do that in most situations, maybe in the evenings or on the weekends. But of course, if you need to go to work and you need to be to work at a certain time and you only have 15 minutes or 30 minutes to meditate, then of course, go ahead and set your alarm, right? But what you'll notice is when you don't set the alarm, you'll tend to get more benefit because your mind's not longing, yearning to know if it's time yet. And then you might notice that you're able to more easily expand your meditation because your mind will have a tendency to just lean into the meditation rather than to rely on the alarm. So this is what you would like to do, is build up to this type of meditation practice. There's other specialized meditations. There's 2 of them that when we get to chapter 11, I'm going to introduce those to you, but not everybody's going to need those. There's a meditation to help you eliminate sexual cravings. If you notice that you have a lot of sexual cravings, maybe you have lots of different partners, or maybe you're with a current partner and you're finding that it's a challenge to be loyal and committed in that relationship, there's a meditation that will help you to eliminate your sexual cravings. So I'm going to introduce that to you in chapter 11, but if anybody ever needs that prior, you can always meet with me privately or look at the books or look at the other resources that I share on that particular meditation, because it can be really helpful to bring down your sexual cravings. And for some people, they might be interested to eliminate their sexual cravings, and this meditation will help you to do that. And then there's another meditation to realize non-self. This is something that we'll be talking about at different times in our program. When we get to chapter 16, I'm going to be teaching you how to eliminate the personal existence view, this fetter or this pollution or this defilement in the mind. And one of the ways to help you do that is with this meditation to realize non-self. And these are 2 specialized meditations that not everyone's going to need. So they're introduced in chapter 11, and I help you to learn what they are, but then you can just invoke them as you need them or if you need them. But these first 2, a breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation, everybody's going to need those. And then the other aspect of how to practice right concentration is to practice singleness of mind in daily life. What this is that you don't allow the mind to rapidly cycle from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. Oftentimes, this is what we're taught, is to multitask. And if you're currently multitasking, your mind isn't actually doing multiple things at one time. You're actually doing one thing for maybe 3 seconds, and then you're rapidly switching to the next thing for 5 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever it is. And then you're rapidly cycling to another thing for 2 or 3 seconds. And then if you do this all day long where your mind's rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing, when you're in a situation where you need to be still and relaxed and concentrated, you're going to find that it's hard. You might find stress and anxiety coming up in the mind, and it's very difficult to just be still and relax because your mind's so used to just rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. So what you would like to do is practice not only the meditation, but you would like to practice singleness of mind in daily life where you're just doing one thing at a time. This will allow you to develop focus and concentration. If your mind's currently not being able to focus and have concentration, there's nothing wrong with your brain. There's nothing wrong with the mind itself. And these 2 things are different. There's nothing wrong with your brain or your mind. It's just that your mind is untrained. You need to train the mind to have focus and concentration. So the meditation is helping you to do that by focusing on the breath and building that concentration through your meditation. But then you need to practice it in daily life where you're just doing one thing at a time. So if you're eating, you would like to just eat. Sometimes people are eating and then surfing on their iPad or watching a movie or something like this. You would like to get to the point where you can train that your mind is just able to do one thing at a time. And when you first start doing this, you might experience boredom. And that might be why you're watching TV and eating, or while you're surfing your iPad or your phone or what have you, and eating at the same time. But you're not going to solve the boredom by filling up your life with things like an iPad or movies or things like this. Surely you're going to be using those things and digesting those things at different times. But if you're trying to do these things at the same time, you're just trying to pacify the mind, and you're going to get bored later about something else because you haven't eliminated the true source of the problem, which is the craving, desire, attachment. Introducing surfing on social media or the web while you're eating is actually making the problem worse. It's not actually solving the problem. The problem is the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, yearning for stimulation. The mind can't be peaceful and content to just eat. It needs something else to be stimulated. And that's the whole underlying problem that you're trying to revert. So if you put the mind in the situation where you're doing just one thing at a time, and you train the mind to be joyful and to be peaceful when you're experiencing that. At the beginning, it can be quite challenging, where you might feel bored or things like this. But then over time, you can overcome those cravings and get to the point where the mind's quite peaceful. If you've ever been on the phone, watch TV, and eat at the same time, and your mind's rapidly cycling, you can see the truth for yourself that when you got off the phone, you were like, what did we even talk about, right? You might have just been lost of like, gosh, I don't even remember what we talked about. I know my mom asked me to do something, but what was I supposed to do? Or my life partner asked me to get something on my way home from work, but I don't even remember what it was. Now you have to go back and find out what it was that was shared with you. Or if you're going to practice right speech and right action and bring forth that wisdom, it's going to be very challenging when you're on the phone watching TV and eating a sandwich at the same time. Your mind's going to be rapidly cycling in this situation, and you're not going to be able to bring forth your full wisdom to practice something like the moral conduct section of the Eightfold Path. And this phone call was probably a lot longer than it really needed to be. It could have probably been a 5 or 10 minute phone call, but because the mind was rapidly cycling through all these different things, it might have ended up being 30 minutes, 45 minutes or longer. And you might have even become somewhat bitter or aggressive, or you might have, kind of lost your train of thought while you were talking, and you kind of have to now clean up the relationship because you weren't focused and concentrated during your phone call, and you didn't get to digest the TV program and benefit from that. And maybe even after eating, you might have stomach pains or aches or something like this. So the mind thinks that it's actually accomplishing more by rapidly cycling like this. We call it multitasking. But this is part of the delusion or the confusion or the misunderstanding. The Buddha referred to it as ignorance, but he didn't use this word in a derogatory way. This is the way we're translating his words today. And we tend to use this word ignorance or delusion. This is what I refer to as the unknowing of true reality. This is a better way to think about it. As one of the things that's plaguing the mind, not only craving and anger, but this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality. The mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. And we oftentimes will conform to whatever's going on around us. So if we're in a work environment and people are teaching you to multitask, and a lot of people are doing that, thinking that it's actually working and your mind's rapidly cycling, you might just conform and go right along with it. But when you step back for a moment and you look at what's really truly transpiring, you can see how this is actually causing difficulties to the mind and causing difficulties in your life. So what you're doing on this path is you're choosing not to believe anybody. You're not choosing to conform to what's going on in the world, but instead to learn teachings, to reflect on them, to independently verify them, and then to practice them and see the truth for yourself so that you can rise above the murkiness of what goes on in the world and sometimes is difficult and challenging in the world. So you can see the truth for yourself if you practice something like right concentration with meditation and practicing singleness of mind in daily life. You'll see that the mind will become more concentrated and more focused and have more clarity. And now you can bring forth that quality of mind in your personal, professional relationships. You're honing the mind. That's essentially what the teachings of the Buddha are, is that you're practicing this better way of life to hone the mind. They're not rules or commandments or anything like that. The Buddha didn't provide a doctrine of things that everybody has to follow and you're going to get punished or rewarded if you do these things. Instead, he's explaining to you the natural laws of existence. He's explaining to you the way your mind functions, and the way that your mind functions is the same way that other people's minds function. And through you learning and practicing and understanding this and cleaning up your own mind, you can get to this peacefulness and this joy. And then you'll understand why people around you are doing the things that they're doing too. But you just might choose to do things differently. And that's why you're an independent practitioner. You're on your own independent journey. A teacher is here to provide you resources and provide you guidance and help you and show you the path. But each individual person is walking that path on their own and will need to do that work on their own. So this is right concentration. And what I'll do is open up to any questions you guys might have on this particular step, including those of you guys online. If you guys have any questions, you're welcome to ask questions. Can you use the microphone? There you go.
Okay. My question is, if I just know the things I believe for a long time, but it's not true, how I face to the uncomfortable emotion from I just know it.
I'm not sure if I understand your question 100%, but let me respond to what I think I'm understanding. And if for some reason I'm not fully answering your question, just feel free to ask some follow-up questions. It sounds like right now you have certain beliefs in your mind that you're starting to discover that aren't true. Is that correct?
I just figure out it's not true, but I believe very long time and fully believe it. And until I know it's not true.
Okay.
And I just feel like I become a different person. I just feel I don't know who I am anymore after I know the things I believe for maybe more than 20 years is not true. And it's totally changed my basic of my mind.
Okay.
And now I just want to know if people have same kind of things happen, what people will do for themselves.
Okay. So what you're experiencing is normal for somebody who's choosing to get onto the path to enlightenment, because we're oftentimes believing a lot of things that we find out later that are false beliefs. And our life can feel like it's crashing down around us sometimes if we're experiencing a lot of those things, back to back to back. So this is actually helpful that your mind is moving from belief to being able to see the truth more and more. Because when you believe something, you don't know whether it's true or false. This path to enlightenment is not about belief, that you don't believe and hope something good happens when you die, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. With the teachings of the Buddha, you're learning, you're reflecting to independently verify, and then you're practicing to be able to see the truth for yourself. And more of that truth, that's what you're awakening to. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment, you're awakening to the truth and the wisdom to be able to see the truth. That for a long time, we grow up thinking that other people are causing us to be angry, or this situation is annoying me. And we learn through the Four Noble Truths that this isn't true at all. And when you learn this for the first time, I know at least with me, I look back and I saw all those times I was angry and frustrated and bitter and harsh to people, and I felt so guilty and shameful. And I felt like, oh my goodness, what did I do to all these people, right? And you can feel like your life's crashing down around you, but there's teachings here to be able to help you to gain that stability of mind. That's what the Eightfold Path is about, in getting a breathing mindfulness meditation practice underway, developing loving kindness, even for this being who you are now. So like in my case, where I felt guilty and ashamed for the things that I'd done in the past, you learn how to have this loving kindness for all beings, including yourself. So it sounds like you don't yet have a really well-developed practice of all the factors of the Eightfold Path yet, and the mind can feel a bit lost. What you're talking about in terms of not knowing who you are anymore, or who you are, or this self, this is part of the 10 fetters, where the very first fetter, it's called personal existence view, where the mind in the unenlightened state has this misunderstanding, this misperception, this ignorance, this delusion, this unknowing of true reality, that the unenlightened mind thinks that this body or this mind is you and who you are as a person. So there's a certain self-image that the mind is clinging to, thinking that this is who you are. And then there's a certain self-identity. I am American. I am a Buddhist teacher. I don't know if you're from China or Korea or something like this. There's certain nationalities, certain ethnicities, certain sexual orientation that the mind tends to hold on to as part of thinking that this is who we are. That's the self-identity, or like an occupation or a job. And as long as the mind's clinging to this self-image or this self-identity, we can experience impermanence, where things are changing in our life, and then we feel like we don't even know who I am anymore. I don't know who I am. I've lost myself. But there really is no self. That's the solution that the Buddha is providing with the universal truth of non-self, is that this body nor this mind is who you are. So even though the mind thinks that I am hungry, well, that's not true. I am not hungry because there's no I here. The body needs food. That's the true reality. Or I am not tired, or I am not thirsty. The body needs water, right? Or the body needs rest. That's true reality. But the mind, because of its misunderstanding, is going to think I am hungry, I am thirsty, I am tired. And then the same thing that's going on with the self-identity. If the mind thinks that I am a Buddhist teacher, that identity, right? Well, now if I hear agreeable things about Buddhist teachers, maybe somebody says, Buddhist teachers are generous and loving and kind. Okay, well, if I identify with I am a Buddhist teacher, well, now I'm going to get conditioned pleasant feelings based on the condition of somebody saying something kind and nice and polite. But because of impermanence, it's only a matter of time before somebody says something degrading and disparaging about Buddhist teachers. And if I identify with I am a Buddhist teacher, now you'll experience painful feelings when you experience that. And you can have the same thing happening when you're changing. So if you've been like a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife, or if you've been a police officer or something like this, and you've assumed this identity of I am a police officer, or I am a boyfriend, or I am a wife, or I am a husband, or I am a wife, all these different I ams. When life starts changing for you, if you've grabbed onto these things thinking that this is who you are, now when impermanence comes and all these things are changing, now your mind's going to feel lost and you're not going to know who you are. So the solution to this is to understand that there is no I, that there is no me. But you need to train your mind to be able to see the truth in that, and then to be able to practice in such a way that you eliminate this confusion that the mind has, where it's holding on to this body and this mind thinking that that's who you are. So it takes time to gradually train the mind. So if I was you, I would start with building out this Eightfold Path, all the individual steps, using the books, using the videos, using these classes if you're able to come here, or you can join online through the live streams, because I do a live stream in the morning like this from the temple, and then I do one at home as well at 9 p.m. at night. So no matter where you are in the world, you should be able to tune into our live streams or read the book, or you can watch the recordings, because all of these are recorded, and if you can't attend live, you can watch on Monday or Tuesday, and you can even get personal guidance to help build up your practice. And that's what the ultimate solution is for you. There isn't any particular words that I can say that's going to instantly fix this for you, but through your work and your effort and dedication, you can gradually train your mind to get to stability. And this is a permanent solution. that if the mind continues in the path that it has, where there's this confusion and this misunderstanding, the mind will continue to experience struggles and difficulties in the world. But by getting to this stability of the mind with the Eightfold Path and getting rid of these pollutions, it's a permanent solution where you can heal from all these things, and then your mind will never need to hurt ever again. Does that help you? Mm-hmm.
It's helpful a lot.
Okay.
And I do have one more question from
Sure.
your answer.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, after I know the truth, what I can believe?
Okay. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have any beliefs whatsoever, because you'll have understood that belief is part of the problem. That with belief, you're just believing somebody. Somebody told you something and you just believe it. You haven't really tested it and verified it for yourself of what's true or false. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you will have had to cultivate lots of wisdom to be able to get to that point. So this path, what you're learning is how to not believe anything. And any current beliefs that you have, you're testing those and you're looking to see what is the truth. And then that way you can eradicate belief from the mind, and then your mind can become more and more stable because you know the truth. When you believe things, it's easy for your mind to be shaken up, like you described, right? Because you believed a lot of things, and now you're finding out those beliefs aren't true, and now your mind's all shaken up. But if you consistently build up your life practice the way that the Buddha teaches, with a nice foundation, and you gradually build this practice up, you'll see the wisdom, you'll see the truth, and then it's unshakable. By the time your mind gets to enlightenment, your mind is unshakable. Nothing can shake it up because you'll know the truth and you'll have deep wisdom. So you'll get rid of all your beliefs. But you don't do that blindly. You do it through learning, through reflecting to independently verify, and through practicing. And as you do that, that's where the wisdom will come into the mind more and more, and you'll see the stability coming into the mind.
Okay. ขอบคุณครับ
You're welcome.
สวัสดีครับ
Where are you from, by the way?
From I don't know where I'm from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I should say, where was this body born?
Oh.
That's a more accurate way to
Yeah,
describe
the
it.
body born from China, northeast China,
Okay.
near North Korea.
Okay.
The neighborhood is North Korea. So have close genetic by body birthway. So it's like have Korea genetic,
Mm-hmm.
North Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
with cold weather. The weather like Germany, Canada, and like to eat the pork a lot.
Okay.
And have winter and eat salty food a lot because the salt can make pork better maybe.
Okay.
So it's northeast China.
Are you visiting Thailand here, or do you live here in Thailand now?
Yeah, I live here for almost 4 years.
Okay.
And yeah.
Well, you're welcome to come here. We have classes on Sundays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays starting at 9 a.m. And we start with meditation, and then we move into teaching. And then we have various courses and retreats throughout the year. We have one coming up in about a week that it starts Monday through Friday. But depending on your work and what you're involved in, you can find a certain schedule that works for you. And of course, you're going to miss classes here and there, but you're welcome to come join in these classes because we just restarted this group learning program. And little by little on Sundays you can learn. You can learn on Wednesdays if you like, and Saturdays. But if you'd like to take one of the courses or retreats, you can see those on our schedule either on the website or the bulletin board, and you'll be able to build up your practice slowly but surely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Pleased to meet you.
สวัสดีครับ
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let me see if we have any here online. We're just starting to live stream at this particular time, so there's probably not too many people that are aware of that. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions. Let me just go through a little bit of a summary here to help you guys understand what it is that we actually discussed today. So as a summary, right effort is about taking initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities. So one of the ways I explain this to my young son is to kick out all the unwholesome stuff and bring in the wholesome stuff, right? That's essentially what right effort is, but there's those 4 right efforts: to prevent the unwholesome from coming into the mind, to eliminate the unwholesome that's currently in the mind, eliminate that from the mind. Then bring in the wholesome into the mind, and any wholesome that's currently in the mind, support it, encourage it, don't allow it to fade, and apply the effort to do that. Then we've got right mindfulness, which is awareness of the mind. You can just think of it as awareness of the mind to get started and develop your meditation practice, which is the next step. But then you're going to ultimately need to understand the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and then to develop that as part of your practice. And I'll explain to you as I teach meditation and all the other aspects of this path how to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness more and more. But for now, just stay aware that the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects, so that now in daily life, when you notice that you're getting agitated or frustrated, try to notice those bodily sensations ahead of time. Start becoming aware of those more and more. You'll get more aware of it through your meditation, but for now, you can just take note of those things that are happening. And then as you deepen your awareness of these 4 foundations of mindfulness, you'll be able to take action to actually apply right effort, because you'll have the awareness of these things that are occurring. And then right concentration, this is where you're practicing meditation and developing singleness of mind. And you might start experiencing the jhanas as your mind's moving through this, right? You're going to, if you stay dedicated, determined, diligent enough, you will experience the jhanas on your way to the first stage of enlightenment, these preliminary phases that the mind goes through. There's only 2 Pali words that I still need to use, which is jhana and kamma, but everything else I teach is in English. This word jhana, it doesn't really translate to one English word, or I would just use it. What it is a preliminary phase that the mind goes through. There's 4 of them. There's a certain amount of meditative absorption or mental absorption that needs to occur in order for the mind to move through these phases. One of the things that happens in the second jhana is that in the unenlightened state, there's a conscious mind and there's a subconscious mind. The conscious mind is polluted to a certain degree with the 10 fetters, but the subconscious mind is even more polluted. If you've ever been in a situation where you've been talking with somebody and something just blurted out of your mouth and you were like, oh my goodness, why did I say that? That was so silly of me. Where did that even come from? You don't even know where that thought or that phrase came from. That's the subconscious mind bringing something up into the conscious mind, and then you say it and you're like, man, I shouldn't have said that. That's so silly. So by the time you get to the second jhana, there's been this unification of the mind where you have full awareness of the mind. There's no longer a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. The entire mind is conscious. And this is what you need to do in order to purify the mind. You need to have full awareness of the mind. You wouldn't be able to purify the mind if there's this subconscious mind that you don't have awareness of. So by the time you do enough training on the Eightfold Path to include meditation, you'll eventually get to the second jhana where you have this unification of the mind or oneness of mind. And there's other qualities that you experience as the mind moves through the jhanas. And we'll be discussing this at different times as you learn and take classes and courses with me. I'll explain what these jhanas are and what you'll be experiencing in those jhanas, so that when you're in the jhanas, you'll know and you'll be able to observe the improved mental qualities that you're experiencing, and then ultimately get to the first stage of enlightenment, because those jhanas are temporary and the mind can regress backwards from there. But once the mind gets into the first stage of enlightenment, the mind can't regress backwards. So if you're in those jhanas and you start experiencing them, it's important to then start focusing on the 10 fetters and now get into that first stage of enlightenment where the mind won't regress. So I'll use this word jhana and kamma, but those are the only 2 that I use, and I always explain to you what they are as I'm using them to help you understand what they are. What this step of right concentration is, while the Buddha is explaining the results of putting together the Eightfold Path, the actual practice of it is breathing mindfulness meditation and the practice of loving kindness meditation, as well as practicing that singleness of mind in daily life. So you're cultivating the qualities of mindfulness and concentration during breathing mindfulness meditation and being able to easily cut off and let go. And in loving kindness meditation, you're practicing to cultivate the loving kindness or this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, and you're eliminating anger, hatred, and ill will. But then you're practicing in daily life to bring forth your generosity, to bring forth your loving kindness through your intentions, speech, and actions, and practicing singleness of mind, where you can be focused and concentrated doing just one thing at a time. And this is what's going to move the mind into more and more concentration. So let me open up to any last questions that you guys might have, either here or on the live stream. If there's anything you guys would like to ask, let me know. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. So what I'll do then is just thank you all for coming. Appreciate that you've decided to learn the teachings today and dedicate some time to understanding the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys have questions, you're welcome to always let me know. We have these classes on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and there's two different programs. There's the group learning program, which is a foundational program on Sundays and Wednesdays, and we do that at 9 a.m. here at the temple and 9 p.m. online, and we do this now online as well from the temple. And then on Saturdays we have a Pali Canon and an English study group where we're studying the words of the Buddha. In these two programs, you're usually starting with the group learning program, which is a 7-month program that goes through the very first book of the book series, and chapter by chapter over the period of 7 months I will help you build a foundation in developing your life practice. And then volumes 2 through 13 is the Pali Canon and English study group, where over the course of a year and a half you're developing and filling out this framework or this foundation in more detail. And then we have various courses and retreats throughout the year that we do here at the temple, and now we're going to start live streaming them as well. So thank you all for coming. Perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.